Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives right here on the Super Review Show. I am joined by my two very good friends, Kyle and Mike. What's going on, guys?
Hey.
So we want to
down.
apologize first and foremost for having this uploaded later in the week due to Mike being sick, unfortunately. We normally do the show on Mondays and it's uploaded to our podcast form by Tuesdays. But I want to just apologize. And today's Thursday, August 3rd, and we're just getting to it now. And we want to apologize for that. So forgive us. Don't kill us, everyone. Just want to let you guys know about that.
Yeah, I was sick as a dog. That's on me, man. That's on me.
It's all good. But we're back.
Burgers are on me, man.
We still wanted to plow through our episode this week. We didn't want to cancel on you guys. So we wanted to make sure we come back with it strong. As the title of this podcast suggests, we're talking tonight about Queen of the Stone Age, In Times New Roman. This album came out, was it two? How many weeks ago was it?
Three? Yeah, it was like at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're going to be talking about Queen of the Stone Ages. I say Stone Ages, forgive me, because I'm thinking of the plural context already. Queen of the Stone Age, In Times New Roman. We were going to spin the wheel initially and talk about another album, but Mike said, hey, that new album just came out. I want to touch on it. And so Mike, since you brought this to our attention, why don't you shed some light on Queens of the Stone Age for a little bit?
Sure. So I mean, I've been following this band since they came out. I mean, lightly. I didn't really listen to their original album. I also kind of didn't come until some of their more popular works. I tend to struggle like playing an entire album of a band unless I absolutely love that album. That's always been something that I have struggled with, and this is no different. This band definitely has had a bunch of hits that I've really enjoyed, and I think that going into this review, it definitely was something that I kind of struggled to get going on as well, like getting into the new album. And they've had a lot of lineup changes. There's really not too many members of the original lineup still in the band, except the lead singer and I believe one of the guitarists. I don't think there's anyone else left in the band currently, but some members they picked up along the way. So for me, this is definitely a good way to kind of launch myself into the band's discography. Their last album, Villains, was not a good album. Like, it was definitely a dud, and I was very kind of going into this was like kind of like not looking forward to a lot of the same. So yeah, other than that, like that was my kind of personal initial impressions of it. You want me just to do my breakdown now, just go straight through with it, and we'll
if you
go on.
If you want to, yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah, sure. So we'll just kind of start off. I mean, everybody knows them by their big hits, like I can't remember the name of that album. Their big name out. If you want to back out to their main page, trying to remember the name of the album now. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. I joined on for Songs for the Deaf. Also Lullabies to Paralyze. I didn't get into the Era Vulgaris and the first two albums. I was really Songs for the Deaf was like their first full album that just has just pretty much the whole way through is just a bunch of really good music. So I'm actually going to see this band here soon. So this was kind of very timely for me. Going into this album, it was definitely it felt like a little bit of the leftover Villains sound, but with kind of a return to one of my favorite albums of their entire discography. What do you call it? Can't remember that one.
Like Clockwork.
Like Clockwork. Yeah, thank you. Oh, my brain's a little scattered. I'm still getting over being sick yesterday, so forgive me. Like Clockwork, absolute masterpiece from beginning to end. One of their, I just can't believe that they were able to really make a bunch of very memorable songs that just really stuck in my head and just blew anything else they had done out of the water. So yeah, coming to this, I can hear some of that leftover sound, and we're starting off with Obscenery, definitely leftover Villain sound. It's got that kind of riffing that they do. It just kind of feels very, I wouldn't say indie rock, but I would just say it has a certain kind of sound to it that I'm not huge a fan of. Might be doing a little too much of that falsetto vocal in this first song.
Completely agree.
Yeah, it was definitely overdone, a little to definitely a detriment, and I was just not a huge fan of that guitar riff, like I said. So, but overall, like the incorporation of the orchestra is nice, but it kind of gets lost in the equation. Not a bad song. It was a 6 out of 10 for me. Still, a decent song. And then we move on to Paper Machete, 6.5 out of 10. This actually was a little bit of an improvement here. Good riff, got that classic Queens of the Stone Age guitar. Vocals are a little bit better here. Straightforward rock song, good solo, and I started to look forward at this point in the album, and I was actually met with a much more like song that I actually enjoyed, which was Negative Space. This was a 7.5 for me, borderline 8. It definitely couldn't break into the 8s for me because it just did not have like overall development of the song that really kept me like guessing and feeling like challenged musically. It felt very kind of like here's a great chorus and here's a simple riff that works. That kind of they really did the vibe for this. The I would call it vibes, but I would call it like atmosphere is definitely on point for this. So yeah, this was like actually my first song of the album where I was like, okay, like this stuck in my head, had me thinking about it after the song was over. And that's kind of like my initial way of really gauging how an album is affecting me. If I think about the song after it's over and throughout the next day, then I know like something obviously there's songs that are just catchy and they're just earworms, and they're not like greatly written developed songs. They're just an earworm because they are catchy. And like while that still has its merit, I wouldn't say that's should be your deciding factor if a song is well written and good. Because there's a lot of catchiness going on in pop music right now. It doesn't mean it's good. It just means that your brain is basically latching onto it, and because it's simple and it's effective. But that doesn't mean it's original sounding or well played. So taking that into consideration, we move into one of my least favorite songs on the album, Time and a Place. While I do appreciate the groove and the kind of psychedelic and kind of style this song delivers, I don't necessarily prefer this side of Queens of the Stone Age. It's very almost a jam song, whereas it's not a traditional like here's your chorus, here's your movements, your parts that lead up to the next part. It's just kind of like continues on. It's repetitive and not my favorite starting this album. So this was a 5 out of 10. Just I could do without this style of song. While I do appreciate it though, because there are some elements of this album that have this kind of feeling to it, this jam feeling, this psychedelic feeling that it likes to bring back on occasion, and it makes good for like driving in the car and listening to this. But as like an album that sticks in your head and you start thinking about like melodically, this song does not do it any favors. So taking a dip here for Time and Place, and same for Made to Parade. Now, Made to Parade is kind of got a strange middle and ending. The beginning is repetitive, similar to Time and Place, almost feels like a continuation of that style of song, and doesn't really do much for me. But then it takes this turn towards the middle and end that really I enjoy, and I think it's great songwriting. Almost remind me of Uriah Heep, actually. That whole middle and ending with the keyboards over top of it and the melodies. I was in heaven. If they had just done more of what was in the middle and end of the song, this would have been easily up there in the 9s. But because it starts off the way it starts, and it just is unable to really build that middle and ending properly, they just kind of jump out. just all I could do was a 6 for it, and just appreciate their ability to kind of bring that kind of song writing, the melodies and the ending that just they were doing. It just was great. I just really wish more of the song was like that. So and then you go Carnivore, I guess that's how you say that. Vocally, this reminds me of Like Clockwork. Very similar to that. It's got that kind of almost U2 feeling, like a flowy kind of like you know, just that kind of quality to it. It almost reminded me of U2 at times. Not a bad song, cool, scattered kind of quality to it, but once again, it just does not really hit the bullseye with the melodies and the memorability that it's kind of bringing. 6.5 out of 10. That's a little high for me. I felt a little less about it, but then I kind of enjoyed the lyrics. I enjoyed the melody, the vocal kind of melody, and like it wasn't anything great, but it was solid. And then we get to the best song on the album. What the People Say is definitely my most favorite, my most like, I feel Queens of the Stone Age attitude, the edge, got some punk rock kind of feeling to it a little bit. Almost sounds like Green Day, if you ask me.
Let's not go that far.
It has a Green Day feeling vocally.
Green Day with horrendous production. Okay.
Well, easy there.
We'll get to it. Don't
worry. Definitely has like the Green Day sound in his voice, almost like, that way he's just kind of, enunciating his words. Very characteristic Queens of the Stone Age sound. I like the guitar layers. I like the attitude. It's got the cool vibe to it. 9 out of 10 all day. And it kind of joins that playlist you'd make of a band. Then we kind of take a major dive here with Sicily. This is similar to their last album, The Villains, with that creepy kind of indie rock feel to it. Not my preferred style. Once again, similar to that song for the like that style, the jam kind of like repetitive, it's got some good style to it. And that style is the word that I think, like, the marriage of style and substance, like songwriting, when that like world comes together and you find the right ratio of both, like style and kind of the sound of your guitar tone, the sound of like the noises and the keyboards and the atmosphere and the kind of production, when you find that and you like bring it together with like songwriting and melodies and memorable qualities, when you bring those two worlds together, you really come away with an absolute gem. And a lot of the ways I feel this album missed out on the songwriting, like memorability, like originality, kind of quality, whilst it was hitting a home run with style, the atmosphere, the effects, the tones, the production I thought was great. I'm not too sure what Kyle's talking about, but we're gonna find out.
I'll get to it.
Yeah, I mean, production was fantastic. So like so like overall, like it misses that mark with the songwriting that really sticks in my head. So yeah, that kind of came into play for me. And then Emotion Sickness, I actually started off like okay on the song, but I actually ended up really liking this one more as time went by. So 7.5 out of 10. Love the groovy riffs in the song, that honky tonk kind of feeling to the guitar, as well as that edgy kind of rock feel. I love the melody group vocal break in this. It repeats a bit too much for me, which it feels like they enjoyed doing that part, breaking into that group vocal, which is a nice break from like the just singular vocal voice on this album, to have that vocal break. But I just wish they had done it a little less and maybe broke off into a couple different directions. But overall, still solid song. And and the vocals are clever. Lots of cleverness in the vocals. Cliche at times, or cringy at times, like with how overly clever they can be. But it's rock by Queens of the Stone Age. What are you going to say? It has a little bit of that effect to it. So and then we kind of ended out with what I think is a great ending to the album. Straight jacket fitting. This is a cool song. It's got the Doors written all over it. All Roadhouse Blues. It literally almost feels like they tried to recreate the Roadhouse Blues feeling, like where it's just like and there's even a part where he's like doing the same thing that they did on that song, and like it literally feels like an homage to Roadhouse Blues. To its kind of detriment, almost feels like you're aware of what they're trying to do, and it feels a little it's contrived, and it's just not like as part of them as it should be. I appreciate it and I like it. It just doesn't feel like it was their idea. So it calls back to that 70s, 60s art rock kind of feel. A good end of the album. I love how it kind of breaks down into that kind of ending where it just it kind of has just the acoustic guitar with some of the pieces of the songs innards kind of laid out before you without the amplified quality to it. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for that one. Overall though, definitely better than Villains. Definitely not even anywhere close to like Clockwork or any of their or not any of, but their other major albums. But it's a solid album. It's definitely missed a mark on the memorability and the songwriting is what really brings it to this rating. And that's a 6.5 out of 10. It definitely could have come to a 7 if it had more a little more of that, like I said, that songwriting, hit the bullet on hit the arrow on the mark, hit the bullet on the head, that just overall captures you and makes you think about the songs. It hit the mark a couple times, but overall I felt like they were going for a style over the substance, and that hurts the rating. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for me.
Wow, that was a lot, Mike.
Yeah, I had to break it down.
Yeah, that's your job. Yep. I'm gonna go next, if that's okay. I just want to because I have never Queens of the Stone Age is a band that I've always known about, but I've never truly listened to any of their music up until now. I mean, that seems like for someone like Mike, that might be like, oh my God, how could you miss out on this album or this album? I always I knew it was one of those bands where I knew the name and I never really dove into their work, and this is my first ever listening to any of their albums. So sorry, all of you Queens of the Stone Age fans out there who are like, how could you never have heard? I get it. I'm sorry, but we are doing this review now. There were parts on this
highly
record.
recommend, not to interrupt.
Yes.
I highly recommend Songs for the Deaf and Like Clockwork. I would say Like Clockwork, then Songs for the Deaf, because Like Clockwork is more your style. It's got that kind of more of the dynamics, the highs and the lows, the quiets and the loud. Whereas like Songs for the Deaf is more like balls to the wall, like more of their edgier, heavier sound, which you might be a fan too, but I think it would be interesting to see your opinion on that. So we'll have to tackle that down the road,
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
for sure.
This is what, their 7th album or 8th?
Let's see. They just released their original album. Yeah.
Let's check really quick. This is their 8th album. It says right here. So, hey, maybe who knows? Maybe career discography breakdown. I don't. Maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll have to see. We'll have to
Kyle
see.
will love that.
Kyle would love
Kyle.
that. Kyle would love that.
That would be torture to me.
Hey. Oh my God. Well, we'll get to Kyle in a little bit. So as I mentioned, I never truly listened to this band at all. I mean, this is one of those, like I said, this is one of those bands where I knew who they were. I just never had listened to them at all. I never had listened to an album. I knew I knew them, but I never heard any songs by them. I just kind of knew them by their own name. I just for whatever reason, I just assumed they were like a hard rock, not heavy metal, but like just a harder rock band, whatever. Not and then this album was my first opening to them, and I was kind of taken by surprise by what I heard. I mean, obviously Mike's gonna have to send me like all their albums, and I say just listen to this one, and go from there. Not a bad record. I mean, my to me, I would describe this album as like a modern take on older sounds. I guess you could say is the best way to describe that for me. There were elements listening to this album where I heard Mike brought up the Doors for the last song. I totally see that. There were some points that I did hear like a U2, like a Pink Floyd kind of vibe in some of the songs. Not all of them, but I definitely could see where like you could definitely see it's like alternative rock meets like almost like a space psychedelic sound to an extent, and not like quite like not as trippy as like certain other bands like a Pink Floyd or like a Doors almost, but like definitely that territory, touching that territory for sure. So picking up my standout tracks list was slightly a little difficult because I mean, when songs sound very similar, because I did not listen. He listened to a lot of the other. He said the songs were leftover or somewhat leftover from their previous album. I can't justify that the other way because I haven't listened to it, so I can't really see. Oh, they went from there to there kind of thing. It's not a bad record. I would definitely say it's not quite for me like necessarily. It's kind of like, because when I was listening to it over and over again, for the past couple of days and a week or so, getting ready for our show, I was like, okay, I've never really, like I said, I know the band. Let me just see what I can do. And sure enough, it left a good impression, but leaving me wanting more in a sense. Like songs like the first couple songs like Obscenery, Paper Machete, kind of like I was like, all right, this my first impression. I was like,
on the bedroom light. Sorry,
it's okay. Like my first impression, I was like, oh, okay, this is what they sound like. At first, I was like, oh, this, because like I said, when you first think of a band, you're like, oh, you don't know what they sound like until you hear their records. And that was for me, like when I first heard Obscenery, Paper Machete, Negative Space, I was like, oh, okay, so it's kind of like a riff rock. I mean, not quite like AC/DC riff rock, but like enough of a riff rock where I can get into a couple grooves here and there. There was a lot of good riffs, as I mentioned. But like certain songs, like what when I first saw the title of What the People Say, I was like, wait, what's going on here? It took me by surprise for a second. I was like, wait, the people, haha, that's funny. And it's kind of like a play on words, which I thought was pretty cool. Like it's PEEPHOLE, people say. It caught me by surprise. I've not really done this before. I'm gonna kind of lump this into one big thing because, like, for me, the songs are not bad, but the songs are not like excellent 10 out of 10s at the same time. So I mean, honestly, it was a unique listen to. It was unique to listen to these songs and process. Like, okay, like they have cool riffs, they have cool sounds. They might have a synth here, not a synth, like just a keyboard here. It was for me. It was a kind of a weird exposure to them as well. Like it was something brand new and I liked it. It just was like, it left me wanting a little bit more. Like with like I said, with What the People Say and like tracks like Time and Place. It was just like, okay, like it kept me interested. I just needed to hear like, I forgive me, I'm not really saying much because I feel like I need to dive more into their catalog. Truthfully, Mike, I'm gonna be honest with you, because this is like out of left field for me a lot. I definitely feel like I need to listen to more of their stuff to get a better grasp on what their overall sound is, I guess you could say. If you could point me in that direction, that'd be great. Because I didn't hate what I heard. I didn't love what I heard. It was kind of like a good plus happy medium on the good side of things vibe, if you will. There were no like listening to the tracks over and over again. I couldn't really pinpoint like a specific one outside of What the People Saying, like, Made to Spread. But there was because like I said, it was something brand new for me. I had never really dove into it. So that's kind of I'm sitting out with that. And it's, you left me wanting more. Let me just put it that way. This is not a bad record, I would say. This is something that's, I think, like if someone came up, I'll give you an example. Like if someone came up to me and said, hey, I'm looking to get into modern day rock music and with a brand new album, I actually probably might say this, truthfully. And I would preface by saying, if it's not your thing, give it a shot. But if it's not, it's okay. And like, okay, whatever. This is kind of what I feel with that. Like I'm sitting at like it's just not quite like, was it like I said, was it the greatest thing ever? No, but was it something I would go back to? I would put a couple of songs in a playlist. Yeah, I put like What the People Say, probably Made the Parade. Just those are the two I would go back to the most, truthfully. But outside of those two, not much else. But they're not bad songs at the same time. It's kind of it's very down the middle for me, very very middle of the road for me on this one. Going to my rating, I'm gonna have to say I'm sitting at a solid 6.75 out of 10. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's not the worst. It's not like the worst thing ever kind of thing. I definitely feel like Mike has to introduce me to more of their music to get a better grasp, because like if I listen to more of their other music, more of their other music, excuse me, it might actually boost this score up, or it might bring this score down. I'm very curious to see how it does that with me personally, and that's just me though. That's my own interpretation of it.
I thought you were going 5 out of 5. That's why I really thought you were going, or 5 out of 10.
Do that too. Yep.
You thought you were going 5 out of 10?
Right down the middle of the, and while I would agree, like actually coming into this album in comparison to their other work, other work has a lot more diversity to it musically. It goes off in different kinds of directions, like riff wise, like I would say song wise, whereas this one kind of follows the same path. Like you said, nail it on the head, has a very similar sound to the presentation. Musically, it doesn't really go off into like a ton of different directions, like with some kinds of melodies and time structures and whatever. It's just kind of all beating at the same pace. So where I could see someone be like, oh, I felt like about the whole thing, I felt them all the same. They're pretty much like 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
But now I was surprised to see 6.7. That's but I like the style of this and some of the word, like the vocals and the melodies. The choruses definitely didn't take it for me, which really like I've become a guy who loves a good chorus. I loves a good memorable stamp on the song that keeps you interested, and that's something I feel like this album suffered on. So for sure.
I thank you for backing me up there, because like I said, I feel like if I knew more of their stuff, this might bring the rating up or might bring the rating down, because I feel like but I'm definitely hungry for more to listen to, like whatever, maybe 1 or 2 albums you could recommend, that'd be good. So because I would just love to. I mean, they're a band, like I said, I knew about. I just never really. I had only heard the name, and I thought, whatever, Queens of the Stone Age, whatever, right? Who cares? But no, and then this was like, oh, okay, this is kind of what they are, but let's see what else I can dive into. That, I mean, you got me curious. Let me just say that. So,
and that's the end of the review, right? We can just spin the wheel now, and
Kyle,
we're
not even spinning the wheel today, Mike.
Fred Flintstone's in the house, y'all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kyle.
So this one's an interesting one, because normally I feel like JT is kind of the middle ground mediator between me and Mike's very opposed views here. Not so much for this one, apparently, because I really didn't like this one. This left JT wanting more. This left me wanting significantly less. I never have to hear Queens of the Stone Age again. I hated this thing, and I'll get into it, but I do want to say that, Mike, you're 100% right. This album is totally style over substance from start to finish. And if you didn't like the style on track 1, you're not going to like the album. And that's what happened to me. I hated the style going on. And what I'm talking about in the production is everything is drowned in a fuzz tone. The guitar tone throughout almost the whole thing. Whereas, yes, there's some cool riffs on it, but it's all drowned out in this fuzz, this overly fuzzed tone he put on it. When they do have like lead parts, it annoyingly follows the same vocal rhythm, like while he's singing, and annoys the crap out of me. The drums here, there's parts where the drums drown out things, but the drums on this, there's nothing interesting in the drumming here. It's one of the low points of the record. So that's where I'm talking about the production. If we're going song by song, interestingly enough, Mike, other than one notable exception, me and you are actually in complete agreement on the peaks and valleys of this thing.
Oh my God.
But you're definitely higher than I am. Obscenery, it's a 4 for me. This thing, it is messy, unfocused. Those falsetto vocals are way overused to the point of annoyance on here. He's never been a favorite vocalist of mine, ever. I've never really liked his vocal style, but especially these falsettos, it's just not good. Honestly, the only thing I ever really liked him on is that Them Crooked Vultures album he did with Dave Grohl and John Paul Jones.
Yeah.
That was great. And even then it had some songs that I was like, that's not great. But as a whole,
I'm not a huge fan of that band too, which is funny because like a lot of people, I know. And it's, I've always like listened to the songs and I'm like, okay, like, I feel guilty saying it was not that great. And like, cause you want to love everything from something you've loved consistently on one side. And it's like, you feel pressured to like it on that side. And when you don't, you're like, what's wrong with me? Am I broken? And, unfortunately, sometimes you just don't like everything an artist does. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that's the only thing I've liked that he's done. I haven't liked any Queens of the Stone Age singles, honestly. Like, they never do anything for me. Paper Machete, it's a 5. It's there. Again, it just has that kind of same style going on. And then the one thing we disagree on, Mike, Negative Space. This is a 3 for me.
Wow.
It's not my least favorite, but it's a 3. I found it to be like mind-numbingly boring. There was no takeaways for me on here. And this is the one I'm talking about with that lead guitar that follows the vocal melody. It was a grating to my ears on this. So that one was a 3. It didn't get much better for the next couple tracks. Time and Place and Made to Parade, both 4s. Time and Place found it to be boring, bit sloppy and unfocused. Made to Parade kind of had some more groove going on. Had a really annoying high-pitched lead guitar in there too that could not make me focus on anything else. Boring songs. But then
what did you think about that middle to end of Made to Parade? Because it really does a cool kind of switch up where it starts to wind the song down, but it actually does some pretty cool like cool kind of like soloing over top of
I honestly don't even remember that off the top of my head. I got so taken out of it by that annoying guitar thing going on that it just annoyed me. I could not do it. But then we get to what I thought was the 2 best songs on the album, like by far. Carnavoyeur, stupid name. Let's throw this out there right now. This album wins the title of worst song names of the year. Almost all these are horrendous. This one I thought funny that you said U2 on this, because this one I got the Doors from. When I was listening to it, I got the Doors vibe on this one. Again, lead guitar part annoying to me. I didn't like it. I do like the orchestration going on here. It was pretty cool. It still leans a little on the boring side for me. A little bit sloppy at times. I thought that the guitar solo didn't necessarily fit as well as it could have. Then you go into What the People Say. Again, horrendous name. Hate the title. But finally, we got something a little bit faster and upbeat and different. And that kind of like change up I really appreciated. The production still took me out of it a bit. It had suffered from that like fuzz production I just don't like. That's just not for me. If you do like that, if you like a fuzz tone and things like that, you'll probably like it more than I did. Could have been a 7 if it didn't take me out of it so much. But I kind of land like a 6, maybe 6.5 on that one. Favorite song on the album. Completely agree with you on this, Mike. Sicily's the worst thing on here. This was a straight 2 for me. This was one of the most boring things I've ever heard. The falsetto vocals were brought back on this. Horrendous. Couldn't stand this. Getting through this one, there's a 9-minute song on this album, and somehow this felt like the longest thing here. I felt like I was listening to this for an eternity. Then we get to Emotion Sickness. Terrible title again. But whatever. The only comment, it's a 5. The only comment I had on this while listening to it, I have it written down right here. It sure is there. It sure is. Straight jacket fitting. Kind of felt the same way. I do totally agree with you. It has that Doors vibe. It was a 5 to me. It's not something I would go back to, but it's well done. I'm not going to take that away from it. Just not for me. Overall, this album suffered mostly on the songwriting side from lack of any memorable choruses. I don't think I could sing you one chorus from any song on here, which, yes, I understand your point from the beginning of the stream, Mike, where you're like, yeah, not everything has to be catchy, but to an extent, I think to an extent, like if you have a whole album where I can't tell you one memorable chorus from it, that's a problem to me. It weighs it down. Like there are some songs on here that could have been brought up at least a couple of points if I could point to a memorable chorus in there, something memorable for me to take away. Like, because, and I'm going to be honest with you, in probably 2 weeks, I'm going to forget what every one of these sounds like. Which is unfortunate. I was honestly hoping that this would kind of turn the tides on, my Queens of the Stone Age hate. It didn't. So for me, at the end of the day, this album comes out to a 4.5. I found it to be mostly boring, but there's a couple, like most of the songs are just boring tracks to me where there's nothing obscenely wrong with them. It's just kind of boring where nothing happens. But there's a couple tracks in there, like Sicily really weighs it down. That was bad, and I really didn't like Negative Space either. I thought those are two of the most boring tracks on here. But hey, I guess I'm the villain today. I didn't expect JT to be higher than Mike.
I know, yeah. Well, I appreciate that because I think so. I think honestly, out of all the entire album, Negative Space has one of the most memorable choruses. Besides what the people say, as in a memorable kind of that style. I think it's one of the few songs that actually has that chorus that almost reminds me of Like Clockwork, but definitely, like you say, it definitely misses the mark in being able to close the deal. And what did you give Like Clockwork, Kyle, if you can recall your
I don't think I ever listened to Like Clockwork.
Oh, I think you did. Yeah, I swore I had you do it.
I don't think you did.
All right, we're gonna have to look back in your notes because I swear to God, I for sure did. Like, and because I remember like
listening to it.
Oh well, shoot, maybe that's a future listen for both of you.
I mean, hey, if they could do better, it was that style. Style, I think, is a big keyword here. If you didn't like the style going into it, you weren't gonna like any of it. I feel like they leaned too heavily on that and just went all in. Like they just doubled down and were like, this is what we're doing. Because a lot of it has kind of these like creepy undertones to it.
Yeah.
And it just didn't resonate with me at all.
Yeah, and that's the leftover villains kind of stuff that you hear on a bunch of these songs, which was not a fan of that album. And I think I actually listened to that album almost around the same time that I listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers album, The Dark. What was it? The Dark. What was the album they put out?
The Getaway.
The Getaway. It come out on the same time, and I literally hated those two albums simultaneously. And and I was just like, oh, I'm so disappointed in music right now. And I was just like, wait. Although The Getaway had a far better memorable experience than Villains, it still pales into comparison to a lot of the Red Hot Chili Peppers work. So it's kind of like it's kind of funny how like your mind is time stamped with how you felt about music going into you know what I mean, like I was just disappointed at some major releases I was waiting for.
Like you didn't like Dark Necessities off that album, bro?
Dark Necessity was actually the best song off that album. It was one of the only songs off the album I'd love. And even so, when I loved it, I could hear melodies in it that reminded me of another song that they had already previously had written. I don't remember which one I was reminded of, but that's the only track, maybe one other track that stood out on that. But I digress. It just Queens of Stone Age definitely did a lot better work with Like Clockwork, and I would like to see what both you guys thought of that, just as a second helping of something that either you love or hate, and kind of put the cap on it, so to speak. So yeah, it's interesting to see your opinions on it.
I just want to say
Mike, it's funny that you said that, because that's how I feel about this year in music. Is I have been, and hopefully it turns around by the end of the year, but I feel like I've been so let down by so many releases this year that have just been not so much bad. There haven't been that many ones that I'm like, oh, this is a horrendous record, but there's just been so many that big bands that I like, and I'm just like, you threw that out there.
Yeah, right.
It's a collection of songs, I guess.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Which is almost worse. I always stand by that. I think it's almost worse to release a boring record than a bad record.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Even if you're like, hey, I'm bringing unnecessary energy where it feels like you're trying to be something you're not, or you're just like using the same riff in different applications, and and things sound the same. I'd almost prefer to like feel the heartbeat and the edge of the like blade of the record versus like something that just really misses the mark and is forgettable across the board. Like, at least I want a good rockin' time where I'm like moving my head and tapping my toe, like and like nothing's wrong with a song, an album that really isn't memorable to absolutely every necessary feature, but can give you an entertaining time in the energy and vibe of the song. So
yeah, and I just want to say one more thing before we wrap it up. I think one of the reasons why I can't really gravitate towards many songs because there was no title track called In Times New Roman.
I was thinking that, JT. I was thinking that.
I was like, also, did Mike pick this on purpose?
Quick side note. So. Horrendous album title.
Oh yeah. No,
what was going through their minds with the titling on the record and the songs? I hate it.
Kyle, you are not allowed to speak about horrendous titles and song lyrics when you have requested that we listen to Falling in Reverse.
Fashionably Late is one of the best albums ever made. This was horrendous compared to that, Mike.
No.
Oh my word.
Compared to that album, this album's like dog crap.
No. You got it wrong, man. You got it wrong. He's confused. Kyle, you've been drinking after work. Hopefully not at work.
He's drinking the Kool-Aid.
So we always have fun.
Anything else for this masterpiece called In Times New Roman?
I'd prefer Comic Sans, but here we are.
Comic Sans. Not Ariel or whatever it's called. Ariel.
No, Ariel will be better too.
That you're not.
And then our next album is what?
Post Malone's latest release.
Malone's, okay.
So look for that coming next week. Post Malone's latest.
What was the title of Post Malone's what?
Austin.
Okay. Post Malone Austin coming up next week right here on the Super Review Show. We're going to be back on Monday nights next week for sure. After Kyle and I, if you haven't already, just want to plug this. Follow us on our social media accounts, simply at the Super Review Show, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever it's called now. Instagram at
Twitter.
the Super Review Show.
Still Twitter.
Oh, it's still Twitter. Thank you.
We're not gonna cave to that.
Exactly. If you haven't already, follow us on our social media accounts, simply at the Super Review Show. Because Mike's going to a concert tomorrow night, and Kyle and I are seeing both nights of Metallica at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey for both nights. We're gonna go deaf. Maybe not. We'll see.
And I'm seeing War of Ages. Shout out War of Ages. That everyone knows who that is, right?
Yes,
Mike is seeing both nights.
Yes.
Metallica who?
Metallica what? Is that an EDM DJ? What's going on? No, I'm just kidding. No, but if you haven't already, I will be posting some stuff on there for our social media accounts as well. So showing how much of a great time we're gonna have at Metallica both nights. Mike doesn't have access to the account, so he can't really post anything. But that's okay. We'll have to fix that one day. We want to thank you all for watching, listening, however you enjoyed us tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in to us. And yeah, this is a very interesting pick. Of course, some hated it more than others, and there was no title track. So needless to say, it was kind of a mixed bag. Thanks so much for watching, listening. We'll see you guys next week.
JT. Wrong show.
I know. Sorry about that. I know. I have another show called Mixed Bag. It's okay. Wrong podcast. We're doing terrible already. No, but thanks so much for watching, listening, however you enjoyed us. Like I said, follow us on our social media.